זה שיר פשוט, זה שיר קצר, אולי נשמע טיפה מוזר, אבל תדע, כי זו עובדה, שאלוהים אוהב אותך, והוא רואה, והוא שומע.
This is my favorite portion. No, it really is. It really is my favorite portion. It's one of my favorite portions. You know, guys know Leviticus. It's one of my favorites. And, but this is one of my favorites. Why? Because I am a self-proclaimed biblical feminist. Might freak some of you out saying that word, but I'm taking the word back. Doesn't mean what it meant in the 70s and all the craziness, but it just means that I'm standing on who God has called me to be as a woman, that I get to be who he's called me to be. I don't have to stand in masculine energy. I don't have to be a man. I don't have to be any of those things. I get to be a woman. I get to lead as a woman. I get to walk in my femininity. I get to be who he's called me to be. So yes, I'm taking the word back, feminism. So sorry if that offends you, but that word, but let's take it back. I'm taking back a lot of stuff. I'm taking back a lot of things. I'm taking it back. The rainbow. I'm taking it back. My granddaughter's bedroom is covered in rainbows because that symbol is a symbol of promise that what an amazing God we serve. And that is what's going on in this Parsha. Pinchas. Oh my gosh. We're in Numbers 25:10, and we're going to take us all the way to chapter 30, verse 1. I think some of you, your translations may be 29:40. And then along with that, there's Jeremiah 1:1 and 2:3, and then John 2. If you don't have a reading list, I'll give you a quick sample of what I'm using. This is the one from the Rooted Cafe. This is the back side of it. I only printed the back today. But you can see, do you guys see that? So here we are. Where's my hand? Oh, here we are up here. This is where we're reading at up here at Pinchas. And you can see where it tells you Numbers 28, 25:10. Anyways, and it goes across. And then over here is the date. Here's the date. Oh, here's the date. So what it's telling me is that by this Saturday, it's kind of like this is when your homework's due. My friend Brenda, that was a great way she explained it. This is when your homework is due. So July the 9th or 8th, I mean, that's when the Sabbath for this portion is. So this is going to give you the Saturday. So when you look at a reading list and you're like, I don't know which one we're on, you can look and see the date of this coming Saturday. So this coming Saturday is July 8th. So I know that's the portion. If you want to get your copy of this, we always have them up. If you go to therootedcafe.com and then you click up on the portion. So if you're watching anywhere if someone would, wherever you're watching from, if you're watching from YouTube or if you're watching on Facebook, someone type this in the chat so others know this. If you go to therootedcafe.com, KAFE.com, you can go under the portion. There's a tab and you can actually, if you scroll, it's just maybe I moved it yesterday. So it's right there. It says reading schedule. Click on it and just download it and print it. You can have one it's there for you for free. Just go grab it. And another thing is great in there while you're in there, go ahead and sign up for a couple things. It's free. Get every single week. We gather together, a group of ladies around a virtual kitchen table or living room, whatever you want to say. We get together and we love on each other. And we just talk about this week's portion. The first, second, fourth, and fifth, if there's a 5, you'll see me and Rebecca. On that third one, you get a special treat with Jen and Robin, and they teach on a Thursday night. For those ladies who can't make it live on Friday mornings, we threw in it one week. We do it in the evenings. But you get to sit around and talk about this week's portion, the practical application of it, what's going on in our lives. You have other women who you can ask questions, and then we have an after party. It's not recorded. You actually can just sit and chat. And if you want to catch up on it, just go on that page. If you go to the Rooted Cafe and you hit portion, you can listen to past ones. You can listen to a woman reading the portion to you. So if you just want someone to read it, if you're not great at reading is really hard for me, then click on it. Maybe listen to it before you go to sleep, or maybe while you're doing dishes or while you're driving to work, or you can go in there. There's a ton of stuff on there. So go in there and investigate. I have my green shake here, which I will be drinking throughout today. Okay, where else are we? Let me see what else I got for you. Okay, so this Torah portion of Pinchas, we have witnessed some powerful examples of divine zeal, right? And the rewards that zeal can bring. And this portion not only reveals the character of Pinchas, but it also teaches us the importance and a very important lesson about our relationship with God and the pursuit of his holiness. So let's dive into this. Okay, let's dive into this. I think it's a fascinating portion. Let's dive into it and let's explore some meanings of all of this, right? So um we didn't really share last week very much about in when we were in our previous, we didn't talk very much about Pinchas, did we? We didn't talk about Eleazar's son or Aaron's grandson. This man, the Israelites, we're going to kind of step back because we need that to come into what's going on here. The Israelites start worshiping another god. I mean, they just start worshiping another god, and a plague is put on them. They begin immoral. We'll say this for children. If there's children in the room, they began some immoral relations with Moabites. They had connected with these outside people, and they had taken on some of their practices. So how did they fail so quickly? I know we all say this like all the time. Like, how did they fail so quickly? How do I fail so quickly? And again, let's sit in this for a minute with them, where they're at, what's going on. I don't think it is always so blatant where they're just like, well, we're just mad and we're going to just do what we want to do. We're the boss of us. I don't think that it's always that like that. I think that a lot of times, if we look here, I think it's just, it happens. It's slowly like your passions, okay, because we know this is really about immoral relations, right? That's going on between the men and the Moabite women, and these men are being seduced by these Moabite women, and they're having relations with them, and in that relationship, what happens is they start worshiping other gods. And I think that those things can subtly happen in your life before you even know it. You're doing things you said you would never do. When you get distracted, and I'll say when I have been distracted in my life and hanging around other people, hanging around, maybe watching something on television or reading something on a book. And I always bring that in because it's really easy to say, well, I don't really hang around a lot of other people. That's not like an issue. I don't do any listening, but it doesn't have to be that. It can be really subtle, and subtly it just sort of gets in there, right? Subtly it sort of gets in there. And before you know it, you're bowing your knee to something that you said you would never do, right? Never. I would never do that. And suddenly you're doing it. Okay. So quickly, from how lovely are the tents of Jacob to this. So we have this man Zimri. He's this high official. He's a high official. And then everything's falling apart. And I'm thinking, can we just sit in his shoes from his perspective? Like, here's this man, he's a high official, everything's falling apart. We're going to walk in his job as a priest is to guard and to keep the holiness of the tabernacle. And he fails. And then Pinchas acts. He's saying, we don't stand for that. We don't stand for that kind of dishonor. These are sacred relationships. And what happened is that Pinchas then gets this covenant of shalom. This covenant, the Holy One gives him this covenant of shalom. And that's something that I would encourage you this week to spend some time doing some research on. Not just like, oh, I already know what peace means. I know what shalom means. Do you? Do you really? Because shalom is not about just being in this state of Zen, in the middle of Zen. I mean, it's about being whole and not fractured in the middle of chaos. It's walking on the water in the middle of a storm. It's falling asleep in the bottom of the boat in the middle of a storm, right? So he gives him this peace. From this violent act, he gets, Pinchas, it's a violent act. I mean, if children are listening, we know the whole, if you're watching, you see me do the motion of the stabbing of what happens. He drives this stake between these two people in the middle of this act. And it's a violent act. And from this violent act, he's given shalom bayit, a peaceful home, this covenant. This is a thing that's said that when marriage is going really well and it's really loving, that you have a shalom bayit, this beautiful, loving home. That's what he's given for, I would say, the home, even in the tabernacle. He's just giving this peaceful covenant. He was blessed for all time and for all generations. This was blessed upon him. Elijah says something similar. Elijah says, I acted zealously. Similar things. Same verbiage is used from what Pinchas did. Acted zealously. The same letters. The only difference in those two things that happened between Elijah and Pinchas is there's some vowel point differences. Pinchas expresses divine anger and brings peace on a nation. I think we should have a hyperlink here, right? A hyperlink should be coming up to John 2 when we see Yeshua tossing tables over in the marketplace. We have a divine anger to bring peace to a home, to the house of prayer, right? He says this should be a house of prayer. This is a house where peace happens. Why are you making my Father's house a marketplace? This is a house of prayer. This is a place to establish intimacy with the Holy One, and you're making it cheap. Isn't that exactly what was happening here? It was a place for them to connect and approach the creator of the universe. And that act alone, even though it was something that would have been an act, this woman would have convinced him that this is what they do to honor their gods, is they would have the sexual acts in front of their temples. So for her, she was showing him that this was maybe an act of honoring God. So again, I don't think this is a blatant, oh yeah, well, I'm just gonna like have sex in front of the temple. Like we're like, I can't even comprehend that. This is, I really don't think I think this is his heart was just skewed by a new vision, and he had a filter now from these Moabite practices, and it wasn't his way. And so he was taking this place that was supposed to be intimate, and he made it cheap. He made it like what everybody else was doing. So let's talk about Zeal for a minute, okay? Let's talk about Zeal. This can be the tie that kind of binds all these stories together, including as we go into the daughters. Oh my gosh, I love this so much. The name Zeal. So I want you guys to really look at peace, at shalom. Spend some time this week on what does that really mean? What does shalom really mean? Because we think we know, oh, Shabbat shalom, shalom, shalom. We say the word all the time like it's nothing, but I really, really would love for you, not for me to tell you, but for you to spend some time and look up the letters. What does that mean when you see the sheen, the hey? I'm not even telling you the rest of it. You guys look it all up. What does that mean? What does that look like? What has to pass through his fire to get the revelation? What is it that has to happen in this state? What is it that Yeshua left you? Because he gave you a gift and you didn't even read the instruction manual, right? That's how I say it to myself. Hey, you've been given this gift, right? Prayed over my daughter this morning. We have something happening. If y'all remember, please remember to pray for her. And she's brand new pregnant with twins, and we're believing for a miracle right now. And when I said that, I said, you have to remember the word says to come to him with prayer, supplication, with thanksgiving. We're supposed to bring our requests with thanksgiving. And it says then that the peace, the shalom of God that transcends all understanding, the shalom that you can stand in the middle of chaos and be able to see, hear, think clearly, not be fractured. the peace, the shalom of God that transcends all understanding. What does it do? Everybody shout it at me. Shout it, shout it. Your kids should know this verse. I think this is pivotal. This is my life verse. It will guard your heart and your mind. It will guard your heart and your mind in Christ Jesus, if that's your translation, right? In Yeshua HaMashiach, in the creator of the universe. It will guard you. There's a guard that will be set on your mind. A guard will be set on your heart so that you can think the way you need to think supernaturally, unfractured, in the middle of chaos. Your heart isn't going to be anxious for anything. Oh, wait, that's how the verse starts. This is the trick on anxiety treatment. Is it simple? Yes. Is it easy? Not always. It gets easier the more it is a practice. So the more you practice this, you actually sit in his shalom. You're able to think clearly. You have a supernatural wisdom. It is beyond what other people can understand. And then you would be able to rise up in this kana, this zealous act. Kana. Okay, so let's talk about zeal. So study your peace. And now I want you to really understand the word zeal. That's the other word for the week I want you to really be thinking of is kana. Kana. That word is kof. Kof, kuf, kof, kof, kof. That's the first letter. And then nun and then aleph. That's zeal. Okay? Okay. So this is this word zeal. What is this word? What is the hieroglyphic of this word in Hebrew? Because remember, if you're new, if you're watching new, understanding that Hebrew is a verb-driven language. Oh, stop talking, Charli. I hate English. I don't like all that stuff. Same. I'm with you. But listen, it is action-driven. It's not a bee is, oh, hey, it's this yellow thing with black stripes. No, it's what the bee does. It flies. It draws goodness out of a flower. I mean, when you see every single word in his Torah, every single word from Genesis to Revelation, every single word that you see that's allowed in there, I want you to remember that there's a hieroglyphic, there's an action movie behind every letter and behind every word. And if you understand that, you're going to get a dimensionality that you can't even understand. That's the reason why we love when the women are in the Ruta Cafe. We have a course that's in there by Brenda Johnson. She does this amazing course in there where she will help you do what I'm about to talk about, taking each letter and understanding what is this letter? What does it do? What's the action? It's not just, oh, it's A, B, C, D. It's not just alphabet. You're not just memorizing the Hebrew alphabet, but in here we have this kof. And what is the picture of this letter? It's the back of the head. It's your spheres of influence and responsibility. It's a portioned off territory. Then you have the nun, the sun, the air, to multiply as in seed, to be fruitful and multiply. This is the sun and the air. This is just beautiful. Then you have the aleph, the leader, unity, achad, the ultimate strength and power that one evokes with a partner to establish strength, partnership, and fruitful purpose. So we're seeing this word zeal isn't just about excitement, or this word zeal is different, right? This zeal we're seeing, I want you to put all those together and imagine, what does this look like? What does this look like? It's the place, the zeal means that place of influence. Remember, it could be good or bad because there's a contronym. That's what I love about the Hebrew language. It can be, what is you, life and death. We're going to look at, this is life, right? This is the positive of this was what's going on here. So there's this influence, this responsibility, this is going on right now with the sun. We see this guy with the place where we're supposed to be fruitful and multiply, with the thing that brings on. Key is the sun or the air is a thing that brings us. The word fruitful and multiply to me isn't just about having children. It's about walking in your intended purpose. So you're influenced in walking in your intended purpose through the strength, Aleph, through the strength and the power, yoking yourself with the strength and the power and a partnership with the Holy One. That's zeal. Okay. We've humanized it to the word zeal to kind of justify our passionate causes. Oh, I have zeal. But it's an energy that flows from walking with the Holy One. It's not a random upheaval. It's not indistractable focus. Pinchas was not an activist. He wasn't. Psalm 69:9 says, zeal for your house consumes me. We hear that quoted again in John 2, right? Pinchas was a guardian of the portals of God's presence. His job was under attack. Okay? His job was to guard and to protect. Like ours in Torah, right? We're supposed to guard it and protect it and keep it. Because how do we approach the Holy One? Through his word. Because we don't have a tabernacle, we can approach him through his word. We can find him in here. We can be close to him in here. We can connect with him in here. So we're going to see how we practically can connect our zeal from things that are violated. We can connect it to this. Pinchas was the first responder here. 14,000 had already died. And he's given this covenant of shalom, wholeness, blessed in the midst of chaos. Isn't that what Pinchas did? He brought wholeness in the midst of chaos. So what's the practical application for this? Zeal for God's word. We look at Psalms 119:97. We hear David saying, oh, how I love your Torah. It is my meditation all day. We should cultivate a deep love for Torah and pursue this fervent study of God's teachings. Oh, Charli, it's hard. I don't understand it. No, that's not true. The word says it is not too hard. It is not too hard for you. I believe that is truly one of those things that our flesh or the Satan, whoever you want to blame, spins, is that it's too hard. I don't have time. It's too hard for me. It is not too hard for you. I believe that the more you're in it, the more he opens it up to you, because as you show that you're wanting to know him. Oh, so that reminded me today when I read that, when I was thinking about this, is that scripture in Psalms 119:97. Oh, how I love it. Oh, I meditate on it day and night. I was thinking about, remember when you would get love letters? Maybe you and your husband or you guys still write each other love letters. But when you would get a love letter, or a letter from a really good friend, right? You would read it over and over. And it would be like worn out, because I've saved some cards from my husband or notes that he's written me. And it's worn out because I've just read it over and over. Now, if he had written it in some hieroglyphic, I promise you, I would have done whatever it took to decipher the code, right? I would have deciphered the code. But we don't do that with his word, and this is his love letter to us. So are we doing whatever it takes, that zeal, that we are taking that passion, that we are letting through his spirit to walk in his ways, because that zeal, the zeal that right kana that we should have for his word, and that we, whatever it takes, you being here is part of your kana, that you want to understand his word better. It's very exciting. Okay, so oh, how I love it. Oh, how I love it. Okay, Pinchas is an example, encourages us. We need to strive for holiness in our thoughts, in our words, in our actions. Why? We know in 1 Peter 1:15-16, he says, be kedoshim in everything you do. And he's referring to Leviticus 19. Be kedoshim, for I am kedosh. What does that mean? Be set apart in everything, because I am set apart. It's translated as holy. Holy isn't perfect. Of course, he is perfect. But what he's saying is be different, be set apart. This is what caused this zeal for Pinchas, is that the Israelites were being called to be set apart. You're not going to do things the way the other people do it. You're not going to worship me the way the Moabites worship their gods, by having these immoral, doing these immoral acts in front of the temple, the tabernacle, the place of worship. That just because they did it in front of their temples, that's not what we do. It doesn't matter what your intentions are or your thoughts. It's not what you do. You're set apart. How do you look different? And I asked myself this morning, what am I doing that makes me look like everyone else that he's calling me not to do? And what am I worshiping that makes me look like everyone else? That's something to meditate on. And I promise you, as you ask him that, the Holy Spirit will start to guide you in that. He will lead you in all truth. So when you ask, he'll tell you. Imagine if your child came to you and starts asking you, "Hey mom, what is it that I do that that offends you? Is there some things that I do that I need to do better?" Would you be like, "Get away from me. I don't want to talk to you about it." Would you not answer that? Your heart would be singing. You'd be so happy. Where do you think you get that characteristic from? From your father. So when you're coming to him and saying, "What am I doing that's offensive to you? What am I doing that's worshiping something that I'm not supposed to? What am I doing that I'm not being kedoshim? What am I doing? I'm not being holy, kadosh. How am I not set apart the way you're calling me to be set apart?" Oh, sister, brother, what a great question to ask. Oh, we are caught up. I'm, coaching leaders and dealing with it. We're always talking about, personal growth, personal development. Leaders are readers. I mean, a great leader is going to constantly being set apart and asking, what am I doing that needs to be better? And what better place to go is than to the Holy One. So we jump into chapter 26 and they take a census. Now we've heard about these censuses before, right? The census. We've taken census before, but this one's a little different. The Midianites hate them and they want them dead, right? So as they're going after this census, this will be the first offensive act that the Holy One orders. Then the men are counted before, except for Joshua and Caleb, they're counted ahead of time. Remember, things that most people have all died. They're about ready to cross over. They've all died in the wilderness. And before, we only just got the numbers, but now we're actually getting the names of the descending families. If you go through and you're like, usually you read through these and you're like, blah, 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 chapter 26. Okay, blah, 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 14,000, blah, 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 40,500, blah, 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 76,000, blah, blah, blah. But you're getting the names of the descending families. Why? This is when I'm telling you, as you're studying and you're reading through these portions, asking the questions rising up in you. Why do we have to know this? And sit in it and figure it out and go look and see maybe what someone else said about it. These are the people who will settle the land, carrying the names of their parents. These are the ones going in. And he's saying, remember, the census isn't like, oh, count the people. It's lift up your heads. Taking account actually builds confidence. Lift up your head so you know who you are and your identity. What do you have? Look around as you're going out. We're gonna fight the Moabites. What do you have? Lift up and take account of what you have. Can you take a census today? What do you have? Lift up your head. Sister, brother, lift up your head. What do you have? Because we normally focus on lack. We focus on the lack. We focus on what's going wrong. We focus on what we don't have. I want to reach out to you and say, what do you have? What do you have? And that should remind you. Yeshua said this to his disciples, right? He said, what do you have? Look around. What do you have? Do you remember when this happened? Oh, wait, they were trying to feed some people and there was a lot of them. Yeah, a lot. A lot of people. What did he say? He said, what do you have? And what did they have? They had some loaves and they had some fishes. They had loaves and they had fishes. And then what did he do? He said, okay, well then let's bless this and let's take this and multiply it. And he blessed it and he multiplied it, and it fed everyone, and there was leftovers. And I think that we get very focused on what we're lacking and what we don't have. And he's saying this does apply to us as we're being able to fight a battle of whatever your Moabite is. You're going to fight this battle. What are you going into that you need to fight? And he's saying, would you look around instead of looking what you don't have and where you're lacking and how you're weak and you're not strong and what you don't have the money, you don't have the experience, you're too young, you're too old. We use a lot of things. I don't have. What do you have? Lift up your head and take a census and account of what's going to go into this promise. What are the gifts that he's put inside of you that maybe were latent, like the seeds inside these women? They came into the wilderness with these seeds in them, and then now they were fruitful and multiplied. These babies came in and they've grown to be men, and now these men and women are going to go into the land. What do you have? What has he placed inside of you that in the middle of your wilderness is growing and needing to be birthed into this? What do you have? And I think that's what he's asking. Lift up your head and let's be counted. Let's count what you have. Let's take a census because we're about to fight some things. And instead of sitting in the lack and sitting in the excuses, okay, I'm going to say it, sitting in the excuses, sitting in all of the complaints, he's saying, stop. What do you have? I'm going to go with you. And I want you to see and remember what I have placed inside of you. What has grown over these last 40 years, 40 days, 40 weeks? What's growing inside of you that you forgot about? And then we jump into chapter 27. The daughters of Zelophehad. We got to say that lots of times, right? So these daughters, oh, it's my favorite. I love it so much. Women, rise up! Rise up! This is true biblical feminism. It's not worldly feminism, right? I just taught my granddaughters, taught them about Deborah, and embracing God's call. We go to Judges 5 is where that whole story is at. But I was teaching them not from a perspective, well, if men don't do it, we have to rise up and do it. That is not the spirit that's happening here. What's happening is for us to rise up. We're going to see this same spirit, right? Kana, this zeal. Are we rising up? Are we rising up in Judges 5 like Deborah, Hayel? Hayel takes this tent peg. Sounds like zeal here. She takes a peg and drives it through something. Does this sound like, oh, wait, yes, it sounds like Pinchas. Sounds like him, right? We've got this zeal. This is just a connection. I believe it's a connecting story. We have Sisera fled to this place where there was peace. This name means a fragment of the unified whole, right? These girls' names, a fragment of the unified whole. I laughed and I wrote down the first Me Too movement. These women are like, me too. Us too. Do they have kana? Let's look at the meaning again of those letters. Kof. This fear, this responsibility, this portioned off territory, this sphere of the back of the head, this sphere of influence, the nun, the sun, the air, the multiplying of the seed, the aleph, the leader, the unity, the ultimate strength and power. This took guts. It took chutzpah. These 5 daughters, they didn't have any brothers. Their plot would go to someone else. This was the law that had been passed down. Their name would be literally wiped off the map. Literally wiped off the map. Their name would not go on a plot on the map. Their inheritance would not go on from that. And right after the census, they approached Moshe. And they're like, there's no sons to inherit. Why should the name of our father be erased just because there's no sons? And they were asking for land, but it was more. Do you see? It was more than just, I need land. I want a thing. What they were saying was that the way things, this is not right. This isn't right. It needs to be changed. They're appealing to this divine rule. And God agrees. What? God agrees. And he keeps going. If a man dies and has no son, forever rule. Now, this isn't just a special exception. He makes it an everlasting law forever. This is an everlasting law because of the kana of these women, the chutzpah. These women come in and they're fighting for what's right. It was all about the legacy and zeal. Everyone gets a shot at a continued legacy. Everyone should have a shot. Everyone should have a continued legacy. Their name should be on the map. He's saying everyone here is important forever. Every man, woman is important forever to have their legacy, to walk in their calling, to be who they're called to be, and to get their apportioned legacy. Because remember what land stands for. I mean, this is deeper than all that. What does land stand for? Land was about legacy. It wasn't just a property they owned. It wasn't just money. It wasn't just, oh, this is my bottom number. This is legacy. Again, we don't understand that because we rent or we live in small little, or in these, I'm looking outside my window and I live in a community where we all houses are in a row. It's not about, we would have to look at it. What's your legacy? What is it that you want to leave? It would be like saying, as a woman, your father dies, there's no sons. So your dad had money in the bank. He may have owned stocks and bonds. Maybe he owned copyrights, whatever his legacy, all the things that were his legacy would now be just given to another family because that had a boy because you didn't have a boy. And I know that even when this law initially was brought into place, my belief is that, first of all, I think, of course, he knew these women, he was giving them the opportunity to rise up, to teach us a lesson instead of leaving it blank. He already knew also that there would be a temptation for there to be a unequal distribution of power, and that he would have to, and legacy, and that he was allowing this to come about so that we would have a clear understanding. And this was an opportunity for us to truly understand his heart for both men and women and our legacy, passing on what he's called us to do, the promise that he's given us as we set ourselves apart, as we rise up with kana. When we align with his heart, that kana rises in us to shamar, to listen, to hear, to walk it out, to obey. Remember? We saw an exception earlier. Those that were tameh, they couldn't participate in Passover. Remember? We saw that earlier. They were there, but they came in, they said, okay, well, I was having my time in with you outside the camp. I wasn't able to participate in Passover. So they come in and they present their request. Let's go back to this verse. Be anxious for nothing. Don't be anxious that you're not able to handle, you can't go to Passover. Don't be anxious that you aren't going to inherit the legacy of your forefathers. Don't be anxious for anything, but by prayer and thanksgiving, present your request to God. And that's how you get that covenant of shalom, the shalom that Yeshua left for you. But that request was to not be left out of Passover. They share the same language as the daughters. I think I read this in, I think Rabbi Foreman teaches this in Aleph Beta, one of his teachings, or one of his teachers does, talking about literally the Hebrew language that's used is the same. They share the same language as these daughters are saying. And it's not used anywhere else in Torah, only in these daughters and with the people who came and questioned and were begging for the ability to be able to participate in Passover, because they weren't able to, because they were outside the camp, because they were tameh, right? They were not, I hate saying clean and unclean. They were not, they were having a time in with God. They were not able to walk in their intended function because of choices that they had made, things that were keeping them from his breath, be able to present himself. And they're saying, because I did this, I want another opportunity. I don't want to miss out. And I'm thinking right away of those that didn't know Yeshua when he came the first time. And his love, that first Passover, that sacrificial lamb, they didn't know him. Maybe they were spending time outside the camp. They were tameh. They didn't know him. They didn't receive him. Or we weren't even there yet. And he's saying, I'm going to give you, because of your legacy that I've given you of eternal life, I'm leaving a legacy of eternal life to you. I'm going to give you a second opportunity. I'm going to honor that. Isn't that what happened with them for the second Passover? He gave them the opportunity for a second Passover. Don't we have that opportunity with his second return? Messiah, the sacrificial lamb, that Passover is going to come back again, and we get the opportunity to participate in a second Passover. Even the dead, those living, the dead will rise and be able to participate in that. Oh, he loves us so much. He loves us so much. It's all about redemption. Okay, I don't even know where my notes are. I just left my notes. They request not to the same language. Again, go back and read that. Go back and check it out if you want to, that it's the same language about them not wanting to be left out. Both evoke this change for the whole nation and not just themselves. Both of those requests, when they came to him, the request was not about just them. This wasn't just about bending the rules. The Tamaim, they are wanting to be part of Pesach. Those that were unclean and outside the camp, they want to be part of Passover. Their request is from a desire to follow his will, feeling the loss or missing out. They want to thank God properly. And the daughters have the same heart. They weren't pining for Egypt. They weren't pining for Egypt. They wanted an everlasting legacy to be part of his holy nation. That is wanting what God wants you to want. Why should our father's name be left out? They felt the loss and they didn't want to be left out. Both were trying to align with the value. The value. Can we apply this to our prayers? Do my plans align with his? Not my will be done, but his be done. Will what I'm asking for just help me? Is it just about me? Oh my God, I'm so convicted. Are my prayers just about what's going to happen to me or my immediate family and my? Are my prayers so narcissistic? Or are they holistic? Are my prayers about how can this change nations, generations, your families? Is what I'm asking for, is it just going to help me? See, prayer needs to come from that place of wanting to do his will. That's a totally, totally different place. It's totally different. When we're rushing the throne room, yeah, sometimes there are some emergencies. Sometimes we're coming in, even asking praying for my daughter today. Rushing the throne room for these babies. I am rushing this throne room, and I'm speaking his word to him. And is it because I just want to have these two grandbabies? Is it just about me, or is it that what I'm proclaiming to him right now is your word says that you have knit these babies in her womb. You have a plan and a calling and a purpose for them, and their purpose is to live and not die. Why? Because these two babies have a plan and a purpose, not just for our family, but for generations to come. And it'll be our responsibility to make sure they rise up as men and women, or men or women, or whatever, as twins, to rise up and walk in their calling, to be who they're called to be, to stand up in the middle of chaos and be able to do hard things because they're going to be set apart, because that's who he's called them to be. And it's not our prayers again. Oh, I'm preaching my conviction to you. My prayers have to align with his will, with what will help a nation generations. That's good leadership. Whether you're leading a family, these women were leaders. The leaders of their family stood up and spoke for not just their generation, but they fought for the equality of all the generations. Are you doing that now as a woman? Are you standing up to say, this is right for us both? This is, there's no male or female. This is us standing in who we're called to be. Are you fighting for the next generation? I was talking to my daughter about, in the process of writing my doctoral dissertation, just talking about women in leadership. And I started this process I started about women in ministry and the struggle that's gone on with women in ministry and women teaching and what this looks like. And, Paul saying women not to teach men. There's a lot of stuff, right? And as I went 2 months into this, it was so dark and the women were so angry, and it was so like, they were like, all they were talking about was misogynism. And I just couldn't do it because I know that wasn't his heart. It wasn't about fighting and being angry with men. And I understood. I'm glad that I read the things I read. I understand Paul's speaking to these congregations. It was because it was a specific issue with a specific congregation. I'm telling you, women taught men. Reach out to me. I'll give you all the verses. Women stood up in who they were called to be, not as activists. They were true feminists, meaning that they were standing in who God called them to be as a woman. Much like Deborah, right? Much like Jael. Much like Shira, who built architect cities. Much like the women who they would give the message to them in the New Testament, said they delivered the message. They taught it. They weren't the letter carriers. They started home fellowships and congregations in their homes. But in the midst of all this, I was like, this is just dark and ugly. And I don't want to spend a lot of time with a bunch of angry people, angry women fighting for this, because it's not about being angry and fighting in anger. That was the whole feminist movement, right? That was the wrong way to handle it. The way to handle it is walking in this godly, set apart. How do I walk this out in a godly way? And I don't know, it's exhausting. And my daughter says, Mom, I need you to do this. Your granddaughters need you to do this. Your great-granddaughters need you to do this. We're standing on the shoulders of these daughters who fought for the same legacy and not losing the legacy of their father because of their gender. And I'm asking you, are you fighting to not lose the legacy of your heavenly Father because of your gender? She convicted me because it was just much easier just to be quiet and do what I do and just, teach Torah every week to women and just But I need you to speak out and ask God, what are the things do I need to align with you that are going to change the legacy of generations so that I can help prepare your bride for your second return? Because that was a covenant that you made to give us all the same legacy. All right. Let's see if I can get to a couple more things before we go. So we know Moses, his legacy seems to be missing. We're speaking on legacy here. Moses gives Pinchas the announcement. This is Aharon's descendant. This was not Moshe's descendant. This was not Moses's descendant. And then we have the census, and only Aaron's sons are listed. Moses' sons, Moshe's sons are not listed. Moshe is taking the census with Eleazar. What about his legacy? Then people whose legacy need accounting for, they're all in here. But what about Moses? Everyone else is ensured a legacy. And then God tells him to ascend the mountain where he's going to die. Okay, well, wait a minute. You have all the other legacies secured. Now you're shown where you're going to die? Well, what about me? What about my legacy? What about my name? Nope, you don't hear that from him. He's more concerned about appointing someone over the people. And he doesn't ask for himself. He asks for the people. Yifkad, the word is to appoint. The next leader will not be his relative, Joshua. Joshua is an extension of Moshe, yes. He takes on himself and he infuses into Joshua, not as biological. This leadership is about the needs of the community. His legacy was bigger than a plot of land. Oh, your legacy, can I speak that to you right now? Your legacy is bigger than a plot of land. Don't let the people be a flock without a shepherd. He minimized himself for the larger mission. That's a leader. He put himself last. Does he have kana? Do we need to go back to that meaning again? Does he have kana? Is this what zeal really is? It's not the stabbing people. It's not necessarily that. I think we were given 3 very good examples of zeal today. We've talked about the zeal of the women, the daughters. We've talked about the zeal of Pinchas. And now we're talking, actually we've talked about 4. We talked about the zeal of those previously who would ask for to be able to have Passover again. And now we're seeing the zeal of Moses. The Torah portion of, where am I at? Let me find my things. The Torah portion of Pinchas teaches us this profound impact on divine zeal for holiness, for kadoshim. Is that better? This divine impact that we can have when we cry out to be set apart, when we cry out to be set apart for the right reasons, to impact generations, to impact our own families, which guess what? Impact the generations. We're about to open up registration for our Raise Them Up conference. Our last year was amazing. Raise Them Up is our homeschool conference that we do every year through the Ruta Cafe. What I know is this, that conference impacts generations. Would you pray with me for that? Would you pray with me? Would you agree with me that you'll be praying for the women and the men who will be watching, the women who are putting this on? Because I have women who are putting this on that have their own families. I mean, and they are busy moms, busy wives, busy in their communities, busy doing other jobs. They are full. Their plates are full, but they still give. They're still stepping out because they know that this is worth it, because it will impact generations, because they have kana for the things of God. They have kana about raising children up in the way they should go. They have kana about empowering parents to be able to, when they're exhausted, homeschooling is no joke. In that job, as they stand in that commitment, in that ministry, as they're leading, they have the kana to know, I have to give whatever it takes to them to know that they are made for this. They can do it. Would you pray with me? Would you pray with me for those, I'm going to say, with Jennifer and Sydney, who have been putting this together for the Ruta Cafe? Would you cry out for their names and their families? And if you're listening to this later, it's not too late. God operates outside of our time. You can pray now, and he'll know you were going to pray, and it'll apply to us today. But would you pray? Would you pray for that? Would you pray for my daughter? Would you pray for my daughter she needs supernatural faith and kana right now to understand that as she's carrying the next generation and what's going on, no matter what the report is of the doctor, that we believe his report? Would you do that? Would you send me some testimonies of your kana or kana in your family? How has something happened in your family, grandparents, great-grandparents, that it has affected generations? Can I say in my family, my grandmother had kana, and her kana was to pray for the salvation of her family. My mother had kana. What for? To pray for the salvation of her family. Every night, I have my best memory of my mother is my mother on her knees at the end of her bed praying. And my memory of this is that I would go in at nights, and what she didn't realize is that what she was establishing was this legacy of praying for our family. This is how she established the legacy. And I would sit and take cotton balls and stuff them between her toes because I just wanted her to hurry up so that she would talk to me. I didn't want to be alone. So I would sit and I would play with her toes, and she'd wiggle her toes and everything when I'm little. But she was praying. And even though that's what I was doing, what I heard was my mom crying out the names of everyone in our family who was not walking in alignment with a calling or the purpose of their life. And she was calling out their names, and she was crying out to the Holy One to listen, to bless them, to keep them, to make his face shine upon them, to be gracious to them, and to grant them shalom, that covenant of shalom. How do we have that covenant of shalom? Being in alignment with him. How do we have that covenant of shalom? By not walking in anxiety, but walking in thanksgiving and saying, what do I have? What do I have? How do we walk in that shalom? Not looking at the lack and what we don't have, but stepping it out into the things and knowing that he has begun a great work, and he is faithful to see it to completion. How do you have kana? How do you have kana? How are you zealous how are you zealous for the things of the holiness of the Holy One, the set apart one? How are you set apart? Are others seeing that, or are they seeing your stress and your franticness and your anxiety? But are they saying, how the heck is she or he? How are they making it through this? Not because you're fake and you can say, this is scary. I don't know what's going to happen, but what I know is this. And you're living that, thus saith the Lord, right? It is written life, as Dr. Alwine would say. You're living the it is written life. That is how you're set apart. That's how you walk in your zeal. Your family will see it. I know I'm just speaking, the zealous heart and spirit would just overflow you today, that you would feel his shalom as you look around and say, what do I have? And you begin to walk in thanksgiving. You begin to walk in praise and worship with him in the midst of the chaos. And you embrace his perfect shalom. Be blessed. I can't wait to see you next week.
זה שיר פשוט, זה שיר קצר, אולי נשמע טיפה מוזר, אבל תדע, כי זו עובדה, שאלוהים אוהב אותך, והוא רואה, והוא שומע, ואכפת לו מכל דבר קטן, תדע לך, שזו עובדה שאלוהים אוהב אותך. זה שיר פשוט.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find